There's ways of talking about these issues that bring us together, but that's not going to come from President Biden or President Trump, because both of them feed on the polarization. Both of them are saying the principal reason you should vote for me is if you vote for the other guy, democracy is going to be over. And that there's no way, if that's what you're telling the public, that you're going to be capable of ending the polarization.
We're going to do this without an intro, unless you want an intro, but I feel like you're going to be all right. Cheryl Hines' husband, how about that?
That is the best thing that anybody says about me.
So we could talk about Curb for an hour, but instead, let's talk about what's going on at the moment, because we're rolling into April here. Things are starting to get serious. There are 3 guys left, and you're one of them. But you got to figure out how you take some of the Trump people and some of the Biden people. So we just had lunch with about a dozen people, kind of discussing a bit of that, but what does that pitch look like? What is the move you have to make, and how is it different taking some of the Trump people and taking some of the Biden people?
Yeah, well, I wish we had recorded our conversation.
We realized that at the end, yeah.
But I talked a little bit about how Trump and Biden are kind of mirror images of each other in one way. Of course, they're very, very different, right? And they're different in temperament and their rhetoric and their personalities but on the issues, there's not a huge amount of difference except on the culture war issues, abortion, guns, the border. All important issues, but they're not the issues that really have our country on the rocks, right? They're more toward the margins. The border could be existential, ultimately, but the big issues, the debt, $34 trillion debt, that can sink our country. And I know we're within 10 years, that debt, within 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar that we pay in taxes is going to go to the debt. It's going to go to servicing the debt. And within 10 years, it could be 100%. Oh, nobody can figure out how to make that sustainable. The chronic disease epidemic, which now affects 60% of our population, the biggest cause, $4.3 trillion a year. It's almost 5 times our military budget. We talked at lunch about diabetes. When I was a kid, the average pediatrician saw maybe 1 case of juvenile diabetes during his entire career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is pre-diabetic or diabetic, and nobody's talking about it. Why is this happening? We're now paying more for diabetes than our defense budget. And it's existential. And, that's just one chronic disease. And there's rheumatoid arthritis. There's all these allergic diseases. Autism is, in my generation, 70-year-old men today, 1 in 10,000 has autism. In my kids' generation, it's 1 in every 34, 1 in every 22 boys. And the cause of that is of just handling that one disease is by 2030 will be $1 trillion a year. So, and these are unnecessary costs. We should be figuring out what's causing them. And there's no other country in the world that has this. That's existential. Biden and Trump can't do anything about the debt. They were the ones who caused the debt crisis. It was their style of governance. The 2 of them together in just 4 years that were given to each of them together, they drove up about the debt equivalent to what all the presidents since George Washington did. So they can't come in and say, I'm going to solve the debt problem. They can't say, I'm going to solve the chronic disease problem, because they presided over it. They can't solve the addiction to war. President Trump actually said he was going to end the warfare state, but that's not what he did. Instead, he brought in John Bolton as head of NSA, and then the other issues, the polarization of our country, they're both feeding on that. That's how they get elected, by polarization. If you want to talk about assaults on our democracy, the big danger to our democracy, is that we're going to get torn apart by this toxic polarization that has not, that is worse today than probably any time since the American Civil War. It's probably worse than when my father ran in 1968, where there was terrible polarization.
Do you fear that more than the external threats or even some of these other issues that you're bringing up?
I think the polarization is, I mean, all of them are ultimately existential. No, particularly the polarization is particularly intractable. I don't think it's unsolvable. I think, and you use this wonderful phrase during lunch, which is, it doesn't have to be this way. And I think all of them look insurmountable, but none of them are. There's ways, imaginative and beautiful ways out of all of them. The polarization is particularly acute today because of the social media algorithms that are commercially incentivized to keep eyeballs on that site as long as possible. As it turns out, the way that you keep eyeballs on that site is by feeding people confirmation of what they already believe in. So if you're a Republican and you ask one question, you're going to get a different answer than if you're a Democrat and ask the same question. You're going to get an answer that reinforces your biases, and that drives us all further apart. So it's more difficult, but it's solvable. I see this every day, Dave, because what I said at the beginning of the campaign is I'm not going to feed into the vitriol or the rancor, the demonization, all this. I'm going to try to identify the common ground, the things that we all share in common, rather than focusing on those little issues that keep us all apart. And what I found is that the landscapes that are occupied by that common ground are so much bigger. We all think we're so different as Americans, but we actually share the same values. Everybody wants to have a great education for our kids. Nobody thinks it's a good idea that the Sinaloan drug cartel is running America's border policy. Nobody thinks that's a good idea, right? Everybody wants to make sure our veterans are cared for, that they're not eating in soup kitchens, and that PTSD and these brain injuries, that we're taking care of them. Everybody wants to take care of the environment. If you want to start a fist fight, talk about climate change.
No.
But if you want to find out a place where everybody agrees, talk about toxicity in our water, in our food, in our air. And when we did the protests in Flint, Michigan, against the lead in the water that they had out there, we had Hell's Angels standing shoulder to shoulder with urban blacks. Everybody feels the same way. If you want to talk about the Appalachian Mountains, how they're being cut down by mountaintop removal mining, almost everybody is going to agree. Nobody wants to see the acidification of the oceans. Nobody wants to see the, acid rain destroy the forest cover on the high peaks of the Appalachians from Georgia to northern Quebec. I grew up fishing and hunting in the Adirondack Mountains. It's the oldest protected wilderness in our country. And yet 20% of the lakes, 1 out of every 5 lakes is sterilized. There's nothing in it because of acid rain.
Wow.
Nobody thinks that's good. Republicans or Democrats, they're all going to say that's a bad outcome. So, and then everybody wants the soils restored in our country, which could solve so many problems. The path out of our debt is in the soils, the path out of climate, whether you believe in it or not. If you believe in it, the best solution is not top-down controls, but rather restoring our soil, because that's the biggest carbon sink that there is. So, there are solutions for all of these, and there's ways of talking about these issues that bring us together, but that's not going to come from President Biden or President Trump, because both of them feed on the polarization. Both of them are saying the principal reason you should vote for me is if you vote for the other guy, democracy is going to be over. And that there's no way if that's what you're telling the public, that you're going to be capable of ending the polarization.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop screaming, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.